Act 1. The expedition into the White Silence. In the heart of the 20th century, the Soviet Union was a land of stark contrasts. It was a place of immense industrial ambition and rigid political control, a society that celebrated the collective over the individual and science over superstition. Yet, within its vast, untamed wilderness, there existed mysteries that defy any rational, scientific explanation. Our story takes place in the winter of 1959, in the remote and forbidding Ural Mountains, a range that forms a natural border between Europe and Asia. This is a land of ancient folklore, of deep, silent forests, and of brutal, unforgiving winters. It was into this white silence that a group of 10 young, experienced hikers set out on an adventure that was meant to be the pinnacle of their mountaineering careers. They were students and graduates of the Ural Polytechnical Institute, all of them certified Grade 2 hikers, just one step away from the highest certification of Master Sports. They were not amateurs. They were skilled, tough, and knew the wilderness. But the wilderness they were about to enter was guarding a secret, a terrifying force that would lead 9 of them to a bizarre and horrific end, creating one of the most chilling and deeply perplexing unsolved mysteries of all time. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. The group was led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, a talented engineering student and an experienced outdoorsman. He had assembled a team of his peers, a close-knit group of friends bound by their shared passion for adventure. There was Zinaida Kolmogorova, a fiery and determined young woman, who was the heart of the group. There was Rustam Slobodin, a strong and reliable engineer. There was Yuri Doroshenko, the light-hearted prankster. Georgy Krivonischenko, who loved to play his mandolin by the campfire. Ludmila Dubanina, a young woman known for her courage and resilience. The powerful and respected Semyon Alexander Zolotaryov, the oldest of the group at 38 and a mysterious World War II veteran. Alexander Kolevatov, a student of nuclear physics. And Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, a man of French descent, known for his good humor. These were the faces of the expedition, young, vibrant, and full of life, their diaries and photographs capturing the joy and camaraderie of their final journey. There was a 10th member, Yuri Yudin. On January 28th, at a settlement on the edge of the true wilderness, Yudin was forced to turn back. A chronic nerve inflammation in his leg had flared up, making it impossible for him to continue the grueling trek. He said his goodbyes to his friends, a moment of deep sadness and disappointment for him. He wished them luck and watched as the group of 9 skied off into the vast, snow-covered landscape. It was the last time he would see any of them alive. In a strange twist of fate, Yuri Yudin's illness had saved his life. He would become the sole survivor of the Dyatlov Pass expedition. The group's objective was to traverse a difficult route and summit Otorten Mountain. Their journey took them through frozen forests and across windswept plateaus. The photographs they took on their recovered cameras paint a picture of a challenging but happy expedition. There are images of them laughing, building camps, and posing proudly against the stark, beautiful backdrop of the Ural winter. The entries in their shared diary are filled with cheerful observations, poems, and jokes. There's absolutely no hint of any discord, any danger, or any sense of impending doom. On February 1st, they began their ascent onto the slopes of a mountain known by the local indigenous Mansi people as Kolytsyko. In the Mansi language, the name means dead mountain. It is a place of dark legends, a place they believe is haunted by the spirits of 9 ancient hunters. The 9 hikers from the Dyatlov group were about to unwittingly and tragically fulfill that ancient prophecy. On that afternoon, a blizzard descended upon the mountain, with heavy snowfall and plummeting temperatures. The group lost their way in the poor visibility and ended up on the eastern slope of Kolytsyko. For reasons that have baffled investigators for over 60 years, Dyatlov made the strange and ultimately fatal decision to set up camp there for the night, on the exposed, treeless mountainside, rather than retreating to the relative shelter of the forest line just a mile below. It was a bizarre choice for a group of such experienced hikers. They pitched their large communal tent, ate a meal, and settled in for the night, preparing for their final push to the summit the next day. It was their last camp. Sometime during the dark, freezing hours of that night, something terrifying and inexplicable happened. Something that caused these 9 seasoned mountaineers to do the unthinkable. Act 2, the scene of unspeakable horror. The Dyatlov group was scheduled to send a telegram from their destination on February 12th. When no message came, their families and the sports club grew concerned, but delays were common in such expeditions. It wasn't until February 20th that a full-scale search and rescue operation was launched. On February 26th, a search party pilot spotted the abandoned camp on the slope of Dead Mountain. When the ground team arrived, they were confronted with a scene that was deeply disturbing and made absolutely no sense. The tent was half buried in snow, but it was clear something was terribly wrong. It had been sliced and ripped open, not from the outside, but from the inside. It was as if the occupants had been in such a desperate panic to escape that they had cut their way out with a knife rather than take the few seconds needed to open the entrance. Inside, the team found the group's belongings, their boots, their warm clothing, their axes, their food, and their money, all left behind untouched. Outside the tent, a trail of footprints led down the snowy slope towards a tree line a mile away. The footprints were bizarre. There were 8 or 9 sets of prints, and they showed that the individuals had been wearing either only socks, a single boot, or were completely barefoot. In the middle of a brutal Siberian winter, with temperatures hovering around minus 30 degrees Celsius, 9 experienced hikers had apparently fled their only shelter in a state of undress, leaving behind the very gear that could have saved them from freezing to death. The prints showed no sign of a struggle, no sign of anyone else being present. They were orderly, suggesting the group had walked, not run, away from the tent, at least initially. What could have terrified them so much that they would choose a certain, slow death in the freezing cold over perceived danger inside their tent? The search team followed the footprints down to the edge of the forest, where they vanished under the heavy snow. Beneath a large, ancient cedar tree, they made their first gruesome discovery. They found the remains of a small fire and the first 2 bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Georgy Krivonischenko. They were barefoot and dressed only in their underwear. Their hands were burned and scraped raw, and the branches of the cedar tree above them were broken up to a height of 15 feet, suggesting the 2 men had been frantically, desperately trying to climb the tree. Were they trying to see something, perhaps the camp? Or were they trying to escape from something on the ground? A short distance away, between the cedar tree and the camp, the searchers found the next 3 bodies, including that of Igor Dyatlov, the group's leader. The bodies of Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin were found at separate intervals, their position suggesting they had been trying to return to the relative safety of the abandoned tent. They were more warmly dressed than the first 2, but still inadequately for the conditions. Slobodin had a small fracture in his skull, but the coroner later ruled it was not a fatal injury. The cause of death of these first 5 hikers was clear and unambiguous. Hypothermia. They had all frozen to death. It was a tragic, but not entirely mysterious, outcome for anyone caught in the Siberian winter without proper gear. The investigation could have ended there, a sad story of a group of hikers who panicked and made a fatal mistake. But the true horror of the Dyatlov Pass incident was yet to be revealed. The 4 remaining hikers were still missing. Act 3, the horrors of the ravine. For 2 months, the search for the remaining 4 members of the Dyatlov expedition continued. The winter snows were deep and the terrain was treacherous. Finally, on May 4th, as the spring thaw began to melt the snow, the search team made their final and most horrific discovery. In a remote, snow-filled ravine, about 250 feet from the cedar tree, they found the bodies of the last 4 hikers. Lyudmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, Alexander Kolevatov, and Nikolai Thibeaux-Brignoles. They were buried under more than 10 feet of snow. The condition of their bodies would turn a strange tragedy into an enduring, terrifying mystery. These four more warmly dressed than the others. It appeared they had taken clothing from their deceased comrades in a desperate attempt to survive, but their deaths were not caused by hypothermia. The autopsies revealed injuries that were unlike anything the experienced medical examiners had ever seen. Nikolai Thibeaux-Brignoles had suffered a massive, crushing skull fracture. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had both sustained catastrophic chest injuries, with multiple, symmetrical rib fractures. The doctor who performed the autopsies compared the force required to inflict such injuries to that of a high-speed car crash. Yet, chillingly, there were no external signs of trauma on their bodies. There were no bruises, no soft tissue damage. It was as if they had been crushed by an immense, yet invisible, force. The mystery deepened even further. In the most bizarre and grotesque detail of the entire case, the body of Lyudmila Dubinina was found to be missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her jaw and upper lip. The investigators were completely baffled. How could these four individuals have sustained such horrific, violent injuries with no external evidence of fight or a struggle? What could have crushed a man's skull and another's chest without leaving a single bruise? And what could possibly explain the missing tongue and eyes of Lyudmila Dubinina? Some have suggested it was the work of scavengers, but the location and precision of the removal has led others to doubt this simple explanation. The final strange clue came from the laboratory. When the clothing of the hikers was tested, several items were found to be significantly radioactive. Where had this radiation come from? It was another bizarre, unexplained piece in a puzzle that was becoming increasingly complex and terrifying. The official Soviet investigation was abruptly closed in May of 1959, just a few months after it began. The final report was a masterpiece of bureaucratic ambiguity. It concluded that the hikers had died as a result of a compelling unknown force. The files were classified and sent to a secret archive, and the area around Dyatlov Pass was closed to the public for 3 years. The official silence and secrecy only fueled a storm of speculation and conspiracy theories that has continued to rage for over 6 decades. What was this compelling unknown force? What really happened on Dead Mountain on that fateful night? Act 4, The Labyrinth of Theories. The Dyatlov Pass Incident is a perfect mystery, a labyrinth of conflicting evidence and unanswered questions. In the decades since the official investigation was closed, a host of theories, ranging from the scientific to the highly speculative, have emerged to try and explain what happened. The most widely accepted scientific explanation is the avalanche theory. This theory suggests that a small, localized slab avalanche struck the tent in the middle of the night. The weight of the snow would have crushed the occupants, causing severe chest and skull injuries seen on the 4 hikers found in the ravine. The initial impact would have created a state of panic, causing the group to cut their way out of the tent and flee in terror. Some of them already severely injured, disoriented and in the dark. They would have stumbled down the slope, eventually succumbing to their injuries and the freezing temperatures. This theory seems to explain many of the key elements of the mystery. However, it is also plagued with inconsistencies. The angle of the slope where the tent was pitched is generally considered too shallow to support an avalanche. Investigators at the scene found no evidence of a recent snowslide. And would a group of highly experienced hikers, including one who survived the Battle of Stalingrad, be so panicked by an avalanche that they would run barefoot into a blizzard without their essential gear? For many, the avalanche theory just doesn't add up. A more exotic, yet scientifically plausible explanation is the infrasound theory. Infrasound is very low-frequency sound, below the range of human hearing. In certain weather conditions, wind moving over a specific geographical feature, like the dome of Kolytsyko, can create a powerful vortex of infrasound. This silent sound can have bizarre and terrifying effects on the human body and mind. It can induce feelings of intense, irrational panic, nausea, and dread. According to this theory, the hikers were subjected to a powerful infrasound event, which drove them mad with a nameless terror. This would explain why they cut their way out of the tent and fled in a state of panic. It was not an external threat they were running from, but an internal one, a terror induced by the very air around them. This theory, however, does not explain the massive physical trauma scene on the last 4 bodies. This leads us into the realm of conspiracy and the military test theory. This theory posits that the hikers accidentally wandered into an area being used for secret Soviet weapons testing. The strange, orange spheres of light that were reported in the sky by other witnesses around the same time are often cited as evidence. Perhaps they were killed by the concussive force of a parachute mine, a weapon that explodes before it hits the ground. This would explain the massive internal injuries with no external trauma. The radioactivity on their clothing could also be explained by fallout from a weapon. The missing tongue could have been a result of a soldier silencing a screaming victim. And the subsequent government cover-up would be a natural part of any secret military operation gone wrong. This theory is compelling, and it explains many of the most bizarre elements of the case. But like all conspiracy theories, it lacks any definitive proof. Of course, a mystery this strange has also attracted a number of more paranormal explanations. The local Mansi people have legends of the Menk, a Siberian version of a Yeti or Bigfoot, a large, hairy creature that is said to inhabit the Ural Mountains. Could the hikers have been attacked by a cryptid? Others have pointed to the strange lights in the sky and suggested the involvement of a UFO. These theories are far-fetched, but in a case with so few logical answers, they have become an enduring part of the Dyatlov Pass legend. Act 5, The Unending Enigma. For over 60 years, the Dyatlov Pass Incident has remained a haunting open wound in the annals of unsolved mysteries. It is a story that refuses to be forgotten, a puzzle that continues to attract new generations of investigators, from government officials to internet web sleuths. In 2019, the Russian government, in response to renewed public interest, officially reopened the case. After re-examining the evidence, they once again concluded that an avalanche was the most likely cause, a verdict that satisfied almost no one. The enduring power of the Dyatlov mystery lies in its perfect storm of conflicting clues. It is a case that has something for everyone. For the scientist, there is a possibility of a rare natural phenomenon like infrasound. For conspiracy theorists, there is the specter of a government cover-up and secret weapons. For the lover of the paranormal, there are tales of Yetis and UFOs. The case is a Rorschach test, a reflection of our own beliefs and fears. But at its heart, the story is a human tragedy. It is the story of 9 vibrant young people, full of life and adventure, who went on a trip and never came home. Their final days and hours are a terrifying blank, a void that we are compelled to try and fill with explanations. We look at the final, haunting photograph recovered from their camera, a blurry, indistinct image of a strange light taken by one of the hikers just before they died, and we are left to wonder, what did they see? What were they running from? The 9 hikers of the Dyatlov group went looking for adventure in the white silence of the Ural Mountains. They found, instead, a mystery that has outlived them by more than half a century. Their story is a chilling reminder that there are still places in the world that are profoundly wild and unknown, and that there are some questions that may never have an answer. The secret of what happened on Dead Mountain on that cold February night in 1959 was buried with them under a deep blanket of snow, an even deeper blanket of mystery.